Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wholehearted Healing with Jo. My name is Johanna, and either welcome back or welcome if you're new here. Today we are going to be talking about age and whether age is the reason for your symptoms, your health situations, all that sort of thing. So in my 9 years, just over 9 years of practicing in my clinic space, I have heard this a lot from people. And yeah, it's kind of got an interesting, I feel like age is kind of a cop-out, to be honest, of like why we're dealing with certain things, but we'll get into that. But why do people feel like, and this is the comment I get a lot in my practice, is like, oh, I turned 30. It just must be when it starts to go downhill. Or, oh, I turned 40 this year. Is this when things start to fall apart? Why do I have back pain, right? Oh, I turned 50. This just must be, whatever. And it's funny because when people make the comment, it's literally always in decades. Like it's always when people turn 30 or people turn 40 or 50. And we associate kind of like what we're feeling with our age. And I want to kind of talk about maybe why that's not 100% true. Yes, obviously, there are things that as we get older, we naturally decline, and there is a normal process to that. This isn't a topic about, not getting old. But a lot of times what people are experiencing in their life is not really because of age. You can have, let's say degenerative things happening in the body without being in pain or having all of these ailments, right? Or diseases or symptoms or whatever. And what people usually are starting to say when they're at 30 or at 40 or at 50 is usually like, I have this unexplained symptom or pain, and I'm not sure where it came from. So this just must mean I'm getting older. And that's not true. What it usually is a reflection of is our life. And it's a reflection of how we've treated ourselves, how we've looked after ourselves, the stress in our life. People forget that like 10 years is a long time, and there's a lot of different things that happen in the different decades of our life. Between the ages of 30 and 40, you're, potentially raising young children, or now you're in kind of the depth of your career, right? You're out of your 20s, right? Where you're starting to get into things career-wise. 40s to 50s, you're probably raising teenagers. Your career is probably in another place, or you're making changes, or you have different responsibilities. When we're 40 or 50 to 60, your kids are going to university, you're retiring, you're going through menopause, right? So I think really what people forget is that like we go through different phases of our life. And when you go from 30 to 40, you now have 10 more years of doing the same old habits, acting the same way, treating yourself the same way, that just gets piled on and just keeps accumulating. And then eventually one day, or potentially one day, your body gets to this point where it says, no more, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep, consuming these toxins or these bad habits or these emotional issues and not ever finding a way to release it or to treat myself better or to, feel better. So that's what's typically coming up, is that you have reached a whole nother decade in your life. You are getting older, yes, but your back pain is probably more of like, what have you been doing the past 10 years or the past 40 years or whatever, right? That's usually what's coming up. And I think people have this disconnect because there's a lack of awareness of how our body is influenced by our life experiences. And so when this unexplained back pain comes up, people have no idea why, right? So it's definitely not the age. However, yes, as we get older, things start to decline, things start to change. But it doesn't mean it has to be painful, and it doesn't have to be uncomfortable. You have to also remember that's a very natural process for us to go through. So why is it so painful for some people and for others not so much? I always say it's really interesting, again, in my clinical space, where I can see, like, especially now with the way technology is, people typically have their health histories and stuff filled out online. And so I see their profile, it has their name, obviously, their age, right? That sort of thing. And it's really interesting because I always say, if anyone is like 60, 65 plus in my schedule, I have no idea what I'm walking into. I have seen 90-year-olds who have the movement of 60-year-olds and the awareness of 60-year-olds, and I've had 60-year-olds that you'd think they could drop dead at any point, right? Like, not to be obviously too kind of vulgar with that, but like there's a very vast difference of the types of clients I see. You know, the elderly population is sometimes challenging to work with just because of the stage of life that they're in. And I think, honestly, they're the most challenging to work with because there is a bit of this like expectation that it should just be fixed right away. Again, age can influence, obviously, the healing process of how quickly we heal, which we can just see that in like elderly compared to children, right? So there is that natural process of it, but also like you've got decades and decades and decades of you doing whatever you've done for your whole life. And now you're upset that you got back pain at 85. And it's like, well, you know, you maybe haven't done the best thing, or you've had these surgeries, or you've had, right, all these other components. And again, things don't just like rectify themselves super quickly, sometimes in the elderly population. But I can see someone, again, who's like 80 and they come in and they walk really good, they move good, they're super active, they're enjoying their life. And then there's others who barely leave the house. And the quality of life is drastically different. And sure, you know, we could argue there's some genetics in there, absolutely. But there's not too many people, elderly wise, who I see that are, you know, struggling with their bodies, who are thoroughly and genuinely enjoying their life at the same time. I think that people retire and again, you can kind of go two ways. There's people who travel and do lots of things and, you know, are really active in their family lives and, you know, whatever kind of makes them happy. And then there's other people who kind of like retire and then they just sit at home and they aren't active and they don't have hobbies and all of these types of things. And so all of this to say, how we live our lives is how we're going to be when we're older. But that doesn't mean that we can't change things with where we are right now. Even if you're 60, you can start becoming more active. I mean, we see all these things a lot of times on the internet of like, this 60-year-old became, you know, a gym rat and started working out and changed their whole life, right? And so you can do that at any age, whether you believe that or not. That's your own choice, obviously. But yeah, there's this element of how we treat ourselves and how we live our life that actually is of influence to our quality of life and our state of being and how good we feel in our bodies. I've been noticing this myself. I could sit here and be like, oh my God, you know, I turned 30. I'm 32 now, but I turned 30 and like, what the hell? Like, my stress levels have been crazy, like my anxiety, my this, my that, and like this just must be when it all starts to fall apart. But in reality, when I take a look at it, I'm in this space because I have been living this long out of alignment with my own energy levels. I haven't maybe been nourishing myself the way that I need to be nourishing myself. I haven't been supporting myself or putting boundaries up in certain places that have been, you know, affecting me, right? Like, where am I influencing my own health and taking accountability for that and being okay with like, maybe this just like, maybe I'm not in a space right now where like, I don't know, my health is a priority and I'm more focused on, you know, a different area of my life, right? That's fine, but you still have to take accountability for the fact that like, it's ultimately because of the actions that you've been taking, good or bad, that you are in a good or bad space, right? And it's easy to say like, oh, I look good and I feel good because I take care of myself. But when we start to feel bad and our body doesn't start to feel good, we think it's this big, explanation as to why we feel so shitty, when sometimes it's just that we're not eating good foods, we're not sleeping well, we're not moving our body, and we're not, dealing with things emotionally well, because our nervous systems aren't regulated, and we're not maybe doing that inner work to have that awareness, right? And where do we need to maybe set boundaries with people? Because that's a big thing as well when it comes to our emotional space. So it really just comes back down to the basics. And that's why a lot of times healing and the work that needs to be done is not necessarily like super complicated or need to be super tough, right? We need to start in the right places, but we don't need all these extra things sometimes to make ourselves feel better. We just need to go back to the basics, go back to the foundation of what it means to be healthy and to feel good. And if you are, again, in any of those areas when it comes to your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, your movement, your emotional and nervous system levels or capacity is not, maybe where it needs to be, or we're not putting boundaries, our relationships are out of whack. If any of those areas are influencing you and you don't have those down pat, I mean, girl, you could take any supplement you want and it's not going to change. Maybe you'll feel a little bit of improvement, but it's always going to come back around. And that's why in my program, my 3-month program that I do online with women is really the foundation of like, let's get our nervous system figured out. Let's get our emotions sorted here. What's impacting us, and how can we support ourselves during when those emotions come up? How can we work through them? How can we release them? And how can we shift our perspective around them? How can we get better sleep? How can we then, after those things are kind of like our foundation, how can we now give ourselves tools and exercises and different things to treat those areas of the body? Because I do believe that, treatment and treating ourselves and having that capacity and the ability to treat ourselves is important with physical hands-on type of therapy type things. But if our nervous system's shot, that's going to drastically influence the effectiveness of the tools that we're using, right? So being mindful and aware of those things, and that's why I start with the foundation of, again, the nervous system and the emotions, because that's really the root of things. And in my life, that's where I've noticed the biggest change. When I can get my nervous system and my emotions regulated, I immediately feel better in my body. And my headaches will go away, my anxiety will go away, my gut issues will start to decrease and go away. Right? So I've noticed a huge aspect of it in my life, and I've noticed it a lot in my clients' lives as well when we're going through treatment clinically as well. Like, I always work on the nervous system and I always support them in those ways. And I do have a lot of people that come with emotional or mental health things going on, and all of that can support it as well. But I wanted to be able to support people, obviously, virtually as well, and give them that opportunity. So again, our age is not the definition of what our health should look like. Our medical system sometimes makes us feel that way, like, well, you're 50, you're bound to have heart issues. And it's like, but why? Why is that the norm? And then if you look at a lot of 15-year-olds, you're like, have they been through loss? Have they been through sadness? Have they been going through challenging times? Have they been dismissing their emotions? Have they been dismissing regulating themselves and working through those things, right? Like, there's all these components that come in. But again, usually if you look at people who have something going on, there's some part of their life where they haven't been honoring themselves, they haven't been nourishing themselves or supporting themselves. And that's the biggest, I feel like, barrier for a lot of people when it comes to their healing, not their age. So that's kind of what I have to say on that. Obviously, if you've listened to my podcast before, I kind of just riff a little bit. I'm not so much structured. Sometimes I write down little bits to make sure I remember what I want to talk about. But this one was more of kind of a loose yeah, kind of like a loose recording here, or a loose podcast episode, but really just to kind of get that concept out, because I have really seen that a lot in my practice and heard it a lot in my practice, and honestly, it's not true. It's not true. So your age has nothing to do with how you feel, and honestly, at any point and stage in your life, you can change how you feel, right? You can start to give to yourself more and not have to accept that just because you're 40 or 50 or 60, right? Or whatever age. So just to be mindful, if you're starting to feel maybe not so great, or you're like, what the hell's going on with me? Take a look at those different areas that I mentioned before, and are you maybe neglecting some area of it, or not supporting yourself in some way where you could be supporting yourself a little bit more? And if you're unclear of where to start, reach out to me, right? I'm on Instagram. That's the easiest place to message me or to contact me, is through Instagram. Reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. My Instagram will be linked in the description kind of down below, or wherever it is on the app, but in the detailed notes of the episode. And yeah, don't be afraid to seek out support when you need it, right? I think that's another area where people, it's not that people are going to be able to solve your problems. You do still have to put the work in yourself, but people can guide you, people can help you, people can support you. And that can get you on the right path and making sure that you're looking at the right things and not just guessing, right, all the time. So being aware of that as well. But otherwise, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. A little bit of a shorter episode today. Like I said, I do plan on kind of recording these a little more frequently. I know it's been probably about 2 weeks since I did my last one. But yeah, we're working on the consistency piece. It's sometimes a little bit challenging and life kind of gets away from you, but that's what we're working on. So that is today's episode. Again, thank you guys so much for being here, listening. I love all your support. I'd love to hear what you thought about this episode, what you think about it. So again, feel free to message me, shoot me a message. Let me know what you thought. Again, any questions, conversations you want to have, feel free. I'm always around to have conversation. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.